Good morning. My name is Andrew Moore. I'm a staff attorney over here at Lone Star Legal Aid, part of the Military and Veterans Unit. Very excited to be here with everyone today. We're going to be giving a short presentation on discharge upgrades in front of the discharge review boards and relevant BCMRs, as well as a brief introduction to VA characterization of services. But before I get into it, a little bit about Lone Star Legal Aid. Actually, today I was supposed to be joined by Marcella Turner. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties here, so hopefully she'll be able to jump on in a little bit. If not, I'll be giving the full presentation today. And so a little bit about Lone Star Legal Aid. We are a legal aid civil service provider. We assist our low-income veterans with civil service needs, and our service areas for 72 counties out in East Texas. You know, that includes Harris County, Bell County over in Fort Hood, all the way up to the Texarkana region. And so that's a big swath of area. And we help, again, on the civil side of things. So everything from vet benefits, so those discharge upgrades, the service-connected disability, non-service connected pension, to landlord-tenant issues, foreclosures issues, bankruptcy, debt collection, consumer issues, obviously family law, child support, divorces, expunctions, non-disclosures. And so we can kind of run the gamut when it comes to civil needs. We obviously can't assist with criminal needs, but again, we can do expunctions and non-disclosures. And to be clear for this presentation, it is only intended to serve as legal information and does not replace legal advice. So please contact Lone Star Legal Aid at 1-800-733-8394 or go to www.lonestarlegal.org for more information on legal assistance. You can also call our main line at 1-844-400-VETS. Again, that phone number is going to be 1-844-400-VETS. 8387. And so without further ado, I'm going to begin the presentation here for discharge upgrades and VA characterization of service. So what discharges qualify for an upgrade? Any discharge that is not an honorable discharge is going to be eligible for a discharge upgrade. So that includes OTHs other than honorable discharges, bad conduct discharges, possibly dishonorable discharges. So anyone with less than an honorable discharge can apply to the relevant discharge review board or Board of Correction for Military Records, BCMR. And all decisions are going to be based on individual cases. There is no boilerplate decision out there. So the board is going to take a look at each and every individual case. And sometimes that's why we have a long wait time to get those decisions. But that is good for our veterans when it comes to each one getting a closer review for those discharge upgrade applications. Each case is unique with its own set of facts and circumstances. And based on those facts and circumstances, the DRB will make its decision in conjunction with the new evidence submitted and new regulations or guidelines based by Congress and or the Department of Defense. And so what I'd really like to point out here is actually the success rates at the DRB level for the Discharge Review Board. These percentage rates are a little outdated, so they have gotten a little better over time. But just to give you kind of a purview to what the actual rate of success is. And so for the Navy and Marine Corps DRB, the successful upgrade is at 4%. While the Army successful upgrades are at 41%. Air Force upgrades, their success rate is at 19%, and then Coast Guard success rate are at 1%. It is interesting to note that since these percentages came out, there has been some more litigation and settlements. And so hopefully the Navy and Marine Corps will have higher success rates with the new settlements that are coming out as far as PTSD goes. And then success rates at that higher level for the Board of Corrections for Military Records, if it's after 15 years and you have to go to the BCMR, Navy and Marine Corps success rate is at 18%. The Army success rate is at 13% if you apply to the Army BCMR. Air Force is at 20, and Coast Guard is at 18. And of particular note, on average, you're about 3 times more likely to succeed at a DRB and a BCMR when you appear in person or have the assistance of counsel or an advocate. So please keep that in mind as you're putting your DRB application together moving forward.
So, can you guys hear me?
Yes, there's Marcella.
Finally. So what will you need to submit to start the discharge upgrade process? Well, you're going to need a couple of things. The first thing you're going to need is a copy of the DD Form 214. And by law, if it has been 15 years since your discharge, you would need to submit the DD Form 293. If it's been more than 15 years, then you would need to submit the DD 149 form in addition to that DD Form 214. In addition to both of those, you will also need a personal statement from yourself surrounding or describing the circumstances surrounding your behavior and the incidents that led up to the discharge. Once you complete the DD Form 293 application, you have a few options on how you would like the process to proceed at that point in time. The first option that you have available is that you're able to just submit the application and have the board review your application on the basis of your application, your military record, and any new evidence you wish to submit, but you will not personally appear before the board. So they'll make that determination based off of just those documents that you've submitted. You also have the option of requesting to appear before the board in Washington, D.C., and provide your firsthand testimony to the board to consider your discharge upgrade. Now, if you choose to do that, of course, you would be responsible for paying the cost for your travel to and from Washington, D.C. That won't be provided to you. In addition to that, you can also request a hearing at no cost to the government to appear before a traveling panel. However, keep in mind that the Navy and the Coast Guard do not provide traveling panels.
All right. And so what will I need to submit to start the discharge upgrade process? Obviously, as Marcella talked about before, you're going to need those applicable forms, depending on if you're applying to the DRB or if you're applying to the BCMR. But it's also important to provide further evidence to substantiate your claims, right? At the end of the day, you want to keep in mind as a veteran, you bear the burden of proof, not the board, to show that you're entitled to this discharge upgrade. So it's important to provide any reference statements or character witness statements, maybe from like religious leaders, a work supervisor, possibly a spouse, first sergeant, CO, something along those lines to kind of help substantiate your claims. It's also good, especially if you're talking about PTSD or mental health issues or physical issues that you might have encountered in your time in the service, to have any relevant medical records. So that includes your military service treatment records, as well as your post-service treatment records, whether that's with a VA or a private healthcare physician. That's going to bolster your case when you apply to the DRB or the BCMR with your complete application. It's also good to have any police reports or investigative reports that are germane to the request for a discharge upgrade, especially for those who are survivors of physical or sexual abuse, military sexual trauma, which may have led to the bad discharge. So the more documents, the more evidence you can provide to the discharge review board or the BCMR, you're going to set yourself up for a better success rate there. And so, as I kind of mentioned before, often veterans or their advocates don't understand that applicants do bear the burden of proof before the boards and must present material evidence to support their claims. And so a successful application consists not only of those required forms like Marcella was talking about before, but also of accompanying evidence and arguments that convince the board that a discharge upgrade is going to be warranted. Although the particular facts of a veteran's case are important, anecdotal evidence suggests that a trained attorney or advocate, as I mentioned before, can thoughtfully prepare the application and synthesize the evidence. It's going to help increase your chances of success at the board or the BCMR moving forward. So remember, keep in mind that you bear the burden of proof, that you're entitled to this discharge upgrade. And in addition to that, if you can get an advocate or appear in person, it's going to increase your chances of success on average. Marcella?
So did you experience trauma while in the military? So this kind of goes back to some of the things that Andrew was just talking about, some of the information that's typically provided to basically set out your case before this board as to why there are mitigating circumstances surrounding why your discharge upgrade should be upgraded. So some of those things that they take a look at are PTSD or military sexual trauma, which is also known as MST, or personal assault, or maybe perhaps a natural disaster at the time. They also look at diagnosed mental disorder while on active duty, or possibly the potential of maybe you experienced some sort of racism during your time in the military at that time. So it's important to keep in mind that all branches of the military consider you to have a strong case for a discharge upgrade if you can show your discharge was connected to any of these categories, as I just stated before. So just going back over it again, mental health conditions, including PTSD, traumatic brain injury, that's what TBI stands for, or sexual assault or harassment that you may have experienced during the military, or sexual orientation. Perhaps you've been discriminated against based off of your sexual orientation.
All right, so how does it work? Again, you're going to want to submit your DD form 214 and submit the appropriate application, whether that's the DD form 293 or 149, depending if you're going to that discharge review board or the BCMR, and submit that additional evidence that we spoke about before to help your application receive a favorable outcome. The DRB will upgrade your discharge only if you prove, right? You bear that burden of proof that your discharge is inequitable or improper. And so to offer proof, you need to provide evidence such as signed statements that we talked about before from you and other witnesses, or copies of records that support your case. Your own personal statement is also important. So put your statement in clear terms in that section 8 of the DD form 293. And a lot of times, because there's not enough space in there with our veterans, we simply attach a personal statement, since that room on the actual application is not going to be sufficient for that personal statement. And you want to be sure to explain what happened and why it's going to be either inequitable or improper for the discharge that you receive. So it's going to be probative to have statements, or it's going to carry weight to have statements from people who have direct knowledge or involvement. You really want to get as many third-party statements as you can to support your position as to why it's inequitable or an improper discharge that you received during your time in the military service. And just to provide a brief definition as to inequitable and improper, inequitable means the reason or characterization of the discharge is not consistent with the policies and traditions of the service, while improper means that the reason or characterization of the discharge is an error, meaning it was either false or violates a relevant regulation or law that was out there.
So what happens after you've done everything Andrew just spoke about? What happens at that point, and how does it work at that stage? Well, you're doing a lot of waiting. So it's important to keep in mind the process can be very lengthy, and it can take as little as 6 to 8 weeks for the DRB to make a decision on your application for a discharge upgrade. However, it's common for the DRB to take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to make a decision. So again, you're just waiting. This can be due to a rise in caseload or how in depth they have to get for each individual application. So once that process has been completed and the board has made a determination, you typically will receive a notice of that decision. If your discharge is changed, you will receive a new discharge certificate, a new DD form 214, and the decisional document of the discharge review board. If your discharge is not changed, you will receive the decisional document of the Discharge Review Board, the DRB, which will include the specific reasons why your discharge was not changed. And you will, it will also include further appeal process options that are available to you. So again, if you receive an unfavorable decision, you will get notice with that decision as to what your appeal rights are. And if you feel that you received this determination in error, you have the option to appeal at that point.
All right, and so how will this help me? What's the benefits to the veteran to apply for a discharge upgrade, right? Obviously, there's the psychological aspect of, I believe my time in the service was honorable, and that carries its own intangible weight. But as far as the tangible goes, for our veteran population, it can help you potentially qualify for being VA service-connected disability benefits or non-service connected pension. And so service connected benefits is going to be, for something like tinnitus or PTSD, where you get a VA rating decision and compensation from that VA rating that you receive. While non-service connected pension is for our low income veterans, it is a needs-based type compensation benefit provided by the VA. And there are certain aspects that you will need to meet in order to be eligible. So if you can meet those elements, then you can potentially be eligible for that non-service connected pension. Other benefits include potentially qualifying for that GI Bill, right? If you had an OTH, getting up to honorable, making sure you can get the GI Bill, and potentially qualifying for the VA home loan and VA small business loan out there. So those are just some of the benefits that you can receive, as well as treatment at the VA, depending on what characterization of discharge you had when you got out of the military service.
I think we're behind one.
My
All
apologies.
right. So other ways that this might potentially help you as well is that it would also potentially qualify you for full VA healthcare benefits, which is really important to veterans or just to individual people in general. In addition to that, it'll also help you obtain veteran status for job placement with state and federal employers. I know one of the biggest issues some veterans face when they're coming out of the military or after they've done their time is finding job placement. So this would definitely be a good tool to help you obtain an additional status, so that perhaps it might put you ahead of other applicants in that job pool due to you having that veteran status when you apply for those jobs within the state and federal level.
All right, keeping up with the presentation here. And so when we do our discharge upgrades, I like to take a two-prong approach with our veterans. I usually or typically also do a characterization of service from the VA. And so what is a discharge determination by the VA? So these are two separate administrative processes, right? You got the discharge upgrades through the DRB with its military branches, whether that's the Navy, Army, and the BCMR. And this is actually through the VA for a characterization of service. And so what is a discharge determination by the VA? There's no specific form requesting the VA to do that determination for the characterization of discharge. All the applicant actually does is request medical treatment in person at a local VA medical hospital or clinic by filing a VA form 1010EZ. And at that point, that'll trigger the VA to investigate the person's military records and make a determination regarding the person's character of discharge. So I'll turn it back over to Marcella here.
So once that's done, the VA may also decide if the person is honorable for the purpose of granting the requested VA health benefits once it has examined all of the evidence in its possession. And as long as there are no statutory or regulatory bars, health benefits may also be granted. This favorable finding does not upgrade the discharge characterization of the person's separation from the military. So keep that in mind.
And so a little bit about why we do this, right? Why we have this two-pronged approach with the going through the VA for characterization of discharge versus going for the discharge upgrade. A lot of it is about time, right? As Marcella said before, it can be up to 2 years sometimes in certain instances, depending on what board or BCMR you're applying to. And so sometimes our veterans need that healthcare before then, so it can be beneficial to them to go through the VA characterization of discharge rather than to be on hold and waiting to get a final determination or a final agency decision from the DRB or the BCMR. And so just to kind of juxtapose the characterization of discharge and the discharge upgrade, with that VA characterization of discharge, the VA is going to make the decision. It's not done by the DRB or the BCMR or that relevant military branch that you served in, where that's the case when it comes to discharge upgrades in its normal facet. For the VA characterization of discharge, it's not actually going to change your DD-214 or any kind of re-enlistment codes or anything like that. You are just held as honorable for treatment within the VA. For VA purposes, you have an honorable discharge so you can get that healthcare services that you might be entitled to. Whereas if you go in front of the DRB or the BCMR, that's going to change the bad paper that you had before, like Marcella said. That changes your discharge type on the DD-214. And so on average, with the VA, a characterization of discharge decision is completed within 2 to 3 months. Whereas on average, that discharge upgrade, as I was speaking about before, with the DRB or the BCMR, takes up to 6 months. And so that in and of itself can be beneficial to our veterans. And the benefit of going through the characterization of service through the VA, it's going to allow that veteran to obtain benefits earned from service in a more timely fashion. And for both branches, any negative outcome can potentially be appealed until you receive a final agency decision.
So what benefits are available without an upgrade? So there are a few things that are available to veterans if you don't get that upgrade. One of them is therapy. So therapy is available for people who served in a combat theater who experienced sexual assault. These services are available at vet centers. You also have the option of seeking medical care related to that sexual assault. They also have homeless shelter services. So in addition to that, they have rental support assistance unless they received an actual dishonorable discharge. And keep in mind that any of those things are also subject to change. So if you're one of those veterans that perhaps experienced some sort of sexual assault, like I just stated, you are able to seek medical care for that, but you would need to make sure that you ask to speak to the MST coordinator at your local VA hospital so that they kind of have an idea of what type of care you're seeking. In regards to the homeless shelter services, that particular service is available under the Grant Per Diem program. And the rental support is under the Supportive Services for Veterans and Families programs. And keep in mind that all of these are available to veterans who served in the military unless they actually received a dishonorable discharge.
And so that concludes our presentation today for discharge upgrades with the DRB and BCMR, as well as a brief discussion on the characterization of service through the VA. Again, Andrew Moore and Marcella Turner with Lone Star Legal Aid's Military and Veteran Services at Lone Star Legal Aid. To apply for our services, you can call us at 1-844-400-VETS. And so that's 1-844-400-8387. Email us at vethhelp@lonestarlegal.org, or you can do an application online at www.lonestarlegal.org. Special thanks to our funders, Legal Service Corporation, Texas Access to Justice Foundation, Texans Veterans Commission, and the Bob Woodruff Foundation, enabling us to provide these presentations during Vet Week this week. So We appreciate everyone in attendance and getting to hear us out. And so we're happy to take any questions should anyone have any. It doesn't appear to be any questions at this time, so we appreciate everyone for joining. Hope y'all enjoy the rest of your vet week. And please reach out to us for any of your civil legal needs.